In the movie Becky, 13-year-old Becky confronts a group of escaped convicts who threaten her family. She ingeniously fights back, using homemade traps to defeat the criminals, including their leader, Dominick. Despite her young age, her violent actions raise concerns among the police about her capabilities. The movie starts with a 13-year-old girl named Becky interviewed by the police regarding what happened in the woods, but she can't remember. 2 weeks before the interrogation, Becky's father picked her up from school early as he was planning to take her somewhere special for the weekend. Meanwhile, on the other side of town, 5 inmates, 4 of whom are part of a crew by a Nazi sympathizer called Dominick, are being transported to another facility. Their names are Apex, Cole, and Hammond. On their way, Apex begins choking the inmate who is not part of their group until he loses consciousness. Dominick then informs the driver about the unconscious inmate, prompting him to stop the truck. At that very moment, Becky and her father stop at a gas station where they overhear a news report about 4 inmates who have just escaped from a prison transfer truck. Becky ignored the news and put gummy worms in her pocket. She felt sad when she saw a family with matching shirts. To feel better, she went to a quiet spot and watched a video of her mom, who died from cancer a year ago. As they resumed the journey again, Becky got really upset when she found out they were going to their family's lake house. The house meant a lot to her mom, and her dad had been trying to sell it since her mom died. To her surprise, her father announces that he changed his mind about selling the house, which instantly lifts Becky's anger. She happily embraces her dog, Diego, but her anger returns when she sees another car arriving. It belongs to her father's new partner, Kayla, and her son, Ty. They give Becky a warm greeting, but she remains hostile, while their dog, Dora, steps in to greet them. To ease the tension, Becky's father asks her to bring their other dog, Diego. While the escape inmates, Dominick and Apex, are now disguised as police officers, they pull over a driver. Dominick violently attacks him, just to steal his car, while the man's young children watch in horror from the back seat. Becky is silent and upset during dinner when her father announces his marriage to Kayla. Heartbroken, she runs into the woods with her dog, Diego. In her old playhouse in the woods, Becky angrily destroys things. She stops when she sees a painting her mother made and remembers singing to her sick mom in the hospital. Back at the lake house, Kayla answers the doorbell. Jeff finds out she has let a man in, who turns out to be Dominick. Dominick lies, saying he's looking for his missing dog. In the woods, Becky finds a peculiar key in her old locker and decides to keep it. Meanwhile, Dominick, upon seeing Dora the dog, makes rude comments about mixed dog breeds, claiming it weakens their predatory instincts. Becky's father becomes upset and politely asks the man to leave and opens the door just to choked by Apex. Under Dominick's orders, Apex goes after Kayla, finding her hiding in a bedroom corner. Apex smashes Kayla's phone to prevent her from calling for help. He doesn't want to harm them. He orders Kayla to go into the woods. Simultaneously, Becky overhears Cole and Hammond, 2 suspicious men, in the woods. They encounter Kayla and inquire about their presence there. Ty reveals they're looking for Becky, but Kayla lies, saying it's their dog's name. As the dog follows them, Cole heartlessly shoots Dora just because he doesn't like dogs. Becky, witnessing it from her hiding spot, bravely steps out, leaving Diego the dog alone in the playhouse. She sneaks her way back to the lake house and secretly observes as her father, Kayla, and Ty are gathered in the living room. One of the intruders reports that they've killed the family's dog, named Becky. Dominick then declares his intention to retrieve what he came for and leave. However, Kayla believes these men won't spare their lives because they've seen their faces. Dominick begins searching the basement for something inside a tin box, growing annoyed when he finds it empty. Meanwhile, Becky sneaks into the lake house through her bedroom window. Unfortunately, the basement ladder leads directly into Becky's room just as Dominick is climbing back up. Panicking, Becky swiftly grabs her walkie-talkie before Dominick notices her. She hides right under the window while Dominick looks out suspiciously. He brings out Becky's backpack to the room and shows it to her father. Just seeing the backpack convinces him that the family has a little girl, and that Becky is not their dog but their daughter. Dominick explains that he's looking for a key with a specific symbol on it, but nobody knows about the key, making Becky the last person to question. Dominick starts demanding to know where Becky is, but her father tries to lie, claiming Becky is in Atlanta with her mother. Seeing Becky's phone in the backpack, Dominick doesn't believe her father's story. He takes out his gun, but Jeff still sticks to his statement. Dominick punishes his dishonesty by shooting Kayla in the thigh. Shocked by the gunshot and Kayla's scream, Becky immediately speaks through the walkie-talkie, pretending she's at the neighbor's house using their phone to call the cops. This claim worries the four men. Dominick is confident that the walkie-talkie is just a child's toy and its signal couldn't reach that far, meaning Becky must still be somewhere on the property. Next, Dominick and Apex escort the father out and sit him down, stating that today will be the day Becky proves how much she loves her dad. Then, Dominick starts threatening Becky through the walkie-talkie, stating that her father will be tortured unless she hands over the content of the tin box in the basement, which he believes she has. Intimidated, Becky blurts out that she doesn't have the key he's looking for, even though Dominick never mentioned the box containing a key. This slip confirms that Becky indeed knows where the key is. To prove how serious he is, Dominick presses a scorching fire poker into the father's cheek, making Becky listen through the walkie-talkie. Afterward, he gives the father a chance to speak, hoping he'd beg for Becky's help. However, the father tells Becky to run as far as she can instead. Furious, Dominick stabs the father in the gut with the fire poker until Becky gives in and fetches the key. She dashes towards her playhouse to get the key, but before she arrives, her father breaks free from his binds and runs into the woods. He meets Becky, tells her he loves her, just as Dominick appears and shoots him dead. The cruel man then runs up to Becky, and Becky, who is overtaken by anger, stabs his eye with the key instead before running away. Dominick returns inside the house with his eyeball hanging out of its socket, so he asks Hammond to cut it off for him, but the scissor he uses is dull. Frustrated by his incompetence, he takes a knife and cuts the eyeball off himself. He then immediately orders his men to look for Becky in the woods. Later on, little Becky is trying to process her shock and grief by the lake, while Cole draws nearer to her and teases her through the walkie-talkie he's brought with him. She quickly runs away when she notices his presence and enters the playhouse where her dog Diego is. Cole tries coming in, but he backs away in fear when he sees Diego because he's scared of dogs, and he doesn't have a gun with him this time. He tries to convince her to hand him the key, promising that he won't hurt her or her stepmom and little brother if she does so. But being reminded of her stepmom only triggers Becky and gets her more adamant to preserve memories of her late mother. This reassures her not to give up without a fight, and so she gears up and arms herself with a broken ruler and exits through the top of the playhouse. To deceive Cole, she tosses a coin into the woods. When he goes to fetch it, she swings down using a zip line she has set up and stabs him with a broken ruler. Becky continues to stab him repeatedly with her makeshift weapon, finishing the job with the ruler. Back in the house, Apex checks on the bandage around Kayla's gunshot wound. Kayla seizes this moment to plead with him, asking him to consider saving them, believing he has a heart. Before she can say more, Dominick summons Apex to talk. Dominick menacingly forces Apex to hold a gun against his chest, reminding him of their 9 years in prison together. Dominick reveals he has carefully planned this and would rather die now than risk Apex betraying him. Guilt-ridden, Apex swears his loyalty to Dominick. While all this is happening, Becky sneaks back to the lake house and tosses one of the walkie-talkies down the porch for Dominick to pick up. Calmly, she threatens that she's capable of very dangerous actions, which surprisingly intimidates Dominick. He then asks Kayla to talk to Becky and persuade her to surrender. However, Kayla truthfully reveals her difficult relationship with Becky, stating that nothing she says will ever convince her to come back. In his desperation, Dominick sends his 2 remaining men after Becky, who is busy setting up an elaborate trap by the lake. During the search, Hammond panics upon discovering Cole's mutilated body. Just in time, Becky appears, haunting him to chase her. She leads him to the dock, where he trips over a fishing line and is impaled in the gut by a nail sticking out of a plank. Becky strikes him with another spiked plank until he manages to wrest control of it and attempts to hit her but misses. Becky swiftly jumps on his back until he staggers and falls into the water, screaming that he can't swim. In a terrifying turn of events, she goes full psycho once again. Starting the motorboat, she drives it towards him, letting the propeller crush him to death. Then, she comes face to face with Apex, the biggest and strongest of them all. Diego tries to come to her rescue, but Apex easily knocks him down, prompting Becky to rush to her unmoving dog's side. Apex easily lifts her off the ground and attempts to carry her, but she fights back fiercely. This enrages him and chokes slam Becky. However, instead of finishing her off, he discovers he can't bring himself to cause any more harm. Apex tells her that killing people leads to emotional baggage and that it's not too late for her to find a better path. With that, he walks away, no longer concerned with Dominick's demands. At the same time, Diego rises, revealing he's still alive after all. The sky is dark when Becky reaches her father's lifeless body. She takes a moment to grieve for him, apologizing to her dad, before retrieving his car keys and heading for the lake house. Through the glass door, she signals to Kayla and Ty that she's coming to save them. Just as Dominick walks in, Kayla yells at him to get his attention, allowing Becky to slip away. When asked, Dominick reveals he's a white supremacist and believes the key will further his cause. Clearly taken aback, Becky calls him stupid, and he attacks her until they get interrupted by a car alarm. As Dominick goes to check it out, Kayla struggles her way to the kitchen, using a kitchen knife to free herself and Ty. Meanwhile, in the parking lot, Dominick thinks Apex has returned with Kayla and attempts to open a car door. However, Diego intervenes, and after a struggle, Dominick manages to close the car door, convinced that Becky is inside. He takes out his gun and is about to shoot when Becky unexpectedly rams him with another car before crashing into a tree due to her inability to brake. The smart car automatically calls emergency services, and once Becky recovers, she heads to the garage, taking a can of gasoline with her. Dominick desperately searches for her, but unexpectedly, he hears her singing and finds her sitting by the fire pit. Instead of killing her right away, he commends her for her ruthlessness and cleverness, offering to recruit her. He suggests adopting her now that her parents are dead, but she firmly refuses. Becky aims a gasoline-filled Nerf gun at him and fires it across the fire, instantly burning him. Enraged and in pain, he tackles her and takes the key from her before aiming the gun at her. Before he can finish her off, Apex intervenes and stops him. After failing to convince Apex to rejoin him, Dominick shoots him. Becky evades Dominick's gunfire, then retrieves a lawnmower from the garage. Apex fights Dominick until Becky runs Dominick over with the lawnmower. Afterwards, Apex apologizes for leaving her alone, but instead of forgiving him, she shoots him dead too. She examines the key, puzzled by its importance. Soon after, Kayla and Ty find her sitting by the barn as police sirens approach. The film returns to the opening scene, where the police question her about the events, but she feigns ignorance. A police officer expresses concern about the violence she's capable of, ending the movie.